politics, right and left. But again, I really want to encourage, we can't have a democracy without an informed citizenry. Leaders, we have to elevate leaders who are responsible with the information they share and encourage and the example that they set. And we also have to make sure we're not empowering right or left, leaders or groups that are crazy or extreme. And it's not that difficult. It shouldn't be that hard for Americans to say we're not going to elevate people who are obviously, nutty and who are leadership positions, or we're not going to elevate or embrace groups that are, militant or extreme and dangerous in their behaviors. And that includes, a bunch of groups on the left too.
But I mean, what we're seeing is this particular conference. I don't think we're seeing something like this on the left. I'm talking about 3%ers.
Well, we may not see it on the left. We may have not yet have seen it at the left at conferences, but we've certainly seen it in the streets all across America. At times that aren't dealing with, look at Antifa's behavior in Seattle, for example.
But this is a political conference. I mean, that is a difference. This is a conference that is supposed to be attracting the base of the Republican Party, and you have 3%ers and Proud Boys walking around.
I mean, let's be candid, Brianna. Both parties have extreme elements that are just, out of bounds in terms of a lot of behaviors, thoughts, and proposals. And it's incumbent upon the rest of us, where we're going to get this thing pulled back together. But these
are folks, anti-government extremists, who feel welcome enough that they are attending a political conference.
Well, I bet if I went to any number of leftist gatherings, I could find a bunch of goofballs as well.
But do you know of any?
Well, do I know of militant leftist?
I'm saying, do you have an actual example of that? I asked you, Governor, because this is an actual example. Do you know of an actual example on the left that basically says it's all the same left and right here?
Well, we have all kinds of examples of people who are, encouraging violence or behaviors that we would otherwise accept are outside the norm on the left, demonstrating that all over the country.
But a political conference where a former president is speaking.
Well, what difference does it make whether it's in a hotel ballroom or a street corner? What's the difference?
I think it speaks to whether they feel welcome at a particular event. And I ask because you're aware that the U.S. government has made clear about how big of a threat anti-government extremism is, that this is a huge threat to national security.
And I would put Antifa and other groups on the left in the same category.
But I will say, I hear what you're saying about that. We have seen some violence. The federal government does not put them in the same category, just to be clear. And I'm just wondering, you said that you would find goofballs on the left. I don't see actually the example on the left of a political conference where you have anti-government extremists showing up. And I'm just asking you if you do, because you said that if you looked, you would find them.
All right. Well, I think if you and I, or you send a CNN crew, if it wasn't otherwise, obvious and evident to a left gathering, not the Democratic Party's, national convention, but some ancillary, group like their version of CPAC, and you went around with a camera or a notepad or otherwise just observed, we could find you some people who would be problematic from your perspective, and from a normal or the typical population's perspective. So the idea that your point is Proud Boys or whatever extremist groups are milling around CPAC, that's uncomfortable and shouldn't be embraced by the Republican Party. Okay, that's a fair point. But let's also agree that in fairness, that this is not just a problem of the right, that there's also extremist militant elements on the left, and we should call that out as well.
Is it more than uncomfortable?
Well, it's the Republican Party does not want to become the party of extremist folks who have conspiracy theories and are militant and violent, and the same is true on the left. So again, I think it's a disservice to the debate to say there's only crazy militant people on the right. There's also crazy militant people on the left, and the rest of us in a democracy, have to be united enough and have enough common sense to say we're not embracing any of that right or left in who we choose as leaders and how we govern our country.
I certainly think that last point has merit to it. I do think it's very clear where extremists feel welcome in attending a certain event that is actually
CPAC,
very mainstream.
as you said, yes, well, there's all sorts of gatherings all around the country. CPAC is one of them, and if you want to be fair about it, let's go do some coverage of some of the extreme
No, look,
left
I do want to be fair about
it.
it, and I'm asking you to name one, and you can't. But we can continue this conversation certainly offline because I'd be very curious about that.
Antifa would be one of them. Antifa would be one of them.
That certainly is a group, certainly. But I'm talking about being welcome at an event. So we'll continue to have this discussion because I really do want to get to the bottom of it, and I certainly appreciate.
Well, I don't think the root cause of what's going on in our democracy is who's welcome in a political hotel room. It's much broader and deeper and more nuanced than that. And so I understand your point, which is that this was CPAC, but the idea that that's somehow the measure of what's going on underneath the hood of our democracy that's just touching the surface, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I do think it's part of it. I will say that I do think it's part of it. Governor Pawlenty, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
John?
All right, a terrific conversation about the divisions in the country. We've also talked about coronavirus and how case rates are rising and how that's a concern. But there is an interesting element in some of the polling that we've seen over the last few days, which is that if you ask people how they are doing, how their lives are, by some measurements they say great, like historically fantastic. Here to discuss, CNN senior data reporter Harry N. Good news.
Yeah, something completely different. How